The moment I saw my wife's hand brush against Travis's arm, I knew exactly what kind of night this was going to be. Her wedding ring glinted under the string lights of the rooftop party, mocking me with each casual touch she laid on him. I watched martini in hand as Brianna threw her head back, laughing at something her boss said, a laugh I hadn't heard in months. A laugh that used to be mine. "Another drink, sir." A waiter appeared beside me, offering salvation in the form of alcohol. "God, yes," I muttered, swapping my empty glass for a full one. "Keep them coming if you don't mind." I'd been sitting alone at our table for 45 minutes now. 45 minutes of watching my wife transform into someone I barely recognized. Her body language shifting like quicksand beneath my feet. Her black dress, the one I'd complimented her on before we left our apartment, now seemed chosen for someone else's eyes. "John, you should meet Marcus from accounting." Brianna had called out to me earlier, her eyes never actually meeting mine. Her attention already drifting back to Travis before I could even respond. That was the only acknowledgement I'd received since we arrived, one hollow invitation tossed carelessly over her shoulder like spare change to a beggar. Travis Whitfield, senior partner at LMB Financial, my wife's boss, of 8 months and evidently her new fascination, he stood tall in his custom suit, one hand casually tucked in his pocket, the other holding a glass of scotch that probably cost more than my best shoes. His confidence was suffocating, even from across the room, the kind that came from old money and the unshakable belief that the world existed solely for his enjoyment. They make quite the pair, don't they? I turned to find a woman I didn't recognize, standing beside me, her eyes following my gaze. "I'm sorry, Travis and your wife," she clarified, sipping her champagne. "They've been inseparable at the office lately. I'm Melanie, by the way. I work in HR." My stomach twisted into a knot. "John, Brianna's husband?" "Oh, I know who you are," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Brianna mentioned, "You might not make it tonight." The words hit me like a physical blow. Brianna had told her colleagues I wouldn't be here. I'd arranged to leave work early, specifically to attend this party with her. We'd gotten ready together in our bathroom, sharing the mirror as she applied her makeup, and I adjusted my tie. "Well," I said, forcing a smile. "Surprise." Melanie nodded awkwardly and drifted away, leaving me alone again with my thoughts and my drink across the roof. Brianna was now standing so close to Travis that their shoulders touched his hand, rested on the small of her back, in a gesture that was anything but professional. Something cold and sharp twisted in my chest. I watched as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear, her lips almost grazing his skin. The intimacy of it was unmistakable. This wasn't networking, this wasn't career advancement, this was something else entirely never seen. "Your wife this animated before," said a voice to my left, a man in an expensive suit who I vaguely remembered meeting at a previous company. Avent extended his hand. "Richard Clean, investment banking." I shook his hand mechanically. "John Harrington." "Ah, the husband." He said, his tone suggesting this was some kind of punchline. "We were starting to think you were a myth." I raised an eyebrow. "A myth?" Richard seemed to realize his mistake and backpedaled just that. "Brian, Na rarely mentions you, and you've missed the last few gatherings. I've been busy." I lied, feeling a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. How long had this been going on? How many parties had she attended without me, while telling her colleagues I was too busy to come? Well, Travis certainly keeps everyone entertained. Richard continued oblivious to my growing discomfort between you and me. He's got quite the reputation with the ladies in the office. My grip tightened around my glasses oh yeah, before Brianna there was that girl from compliance. And before that, his executive assistant, the man's a machine. Richard laughed, then seemed to register who he was talking to. But I'm sure it's nothing like that with Brianna. They're just close colleagues. I nodded stiffly, watching as Travis's hand slid lower on my wife's back, right colleagues. Just then, the crowd parted momentarily, and Brianna glanced in my direction. Our eyes met for a split second before she quickly looked away, leaning closer to Travi. And whispering something that made him smirk. That was it. I drained my glass and set it down with a decisive clink, without a word to anyone. I stood up and walked toward the elevator. No dramatic scene, no confrontation, Just the quiet dignity of removing myself from a situation where I was clearly unwanted as the elevator doors closed. Cutting off my view of the rooftop, I caught one last glimpse of Brianna. She was looking in my direction, finally. Her expression unreadable from this distance for a moment. I thought she might call out, might walk over to stop me. She didn't. The elevator descended 38 floors, and with each level, a strange calm settled over me. By the time I reached the ground floor, something had shifted inside me. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about the past several months of canceled dinners, late nights at the office, and the growing distance between us that I'd been desperately trying to ignore. Rough night? Asked the doorman as I stumbled slightly on my way out. You could say that, I replied, straightening my jacket. Want me to call you a cab? Mr. Harrington? I was surprised he knew my name. I must have looked confused because he added, I've seen you pick up Mrs. Harrington many times. You always wait in the lobby. A memory flashed through my mind, me sitting in this very lobby, night after night, waiting for Brianna to finish just one more thing before we could head home together. How many of those nights had she actually been with Travis? No cab, thanks. And I said, I think I need some air outside the building. Manhattan's night air hit me like reality itself. I stood on the sidewalk, watching yellow taxis blur past the city lights, reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain for almost an hour. I just wandered the streets, my mind racing faster than my feet could carry me. A memory surfaced of our wedding day. 5 years ago, Brianna radiant in white, promising to love and cherish me forever. Had she meant it then? Or had I always been a placeholder? Someone safe and stable until someone more exciting came along. My phone vibrated in my pocket at 11:42 p. Maybe you'll come back 4 words. No explanation, no apology. Just a question that felt more like an afterthought than genuine concern. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without responding. At midnight, I found myself at a bar, 2 blocks from our apartment. It was dark and anonymous. Exactly what I needed. What can I get you? Asked the bartender, a woman with sleeve tattoos and tired eyes. Whiskey need? She poured me a generous glass and slid it across the counter. Bad day? I laughed without humor. Bad year, I think she nodded sympathetically. Want to talk about it? I didn't, not really. But the alcohol and the events of the night loosened my tongue. I think my wife is having an affair with her boss. The bartender, Kelly, according to her name tag, raised her eyebrows. You think, I saw them together tonight, the way they looked at each other, the way they touched. I took a large gulp of whiskey, welcoming the burn. Let's just say it wasn't professional. So what are you going to do about it? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I have no idea. I admitted Kelly refilled my glass without being asked on the house. You look like you need it by 1:30, eh? I'd had enough to drink that the edges of my pain had blurred, but not enough to forget. I paid my tab, leaving Kelly a generous tip, and headed home, hoping Brianna would still be at the party. When I arrived, no such luck as I approached our building. A taxi pulled up and Brianna stepped out. I ducked into a doorway, watching as she paid the driver, and entered our building. Alone. At least Travis hadn't come home with her. I waited 10 minutes before following. Giving her time to get upstairs when I entered our apartment, all the lights were on, but there was no sign of Brianna. Bree? I called out my voice, echoing in the empty living room. The bathroom door opened and she emerged, her face freshly washed, her party dress replaced by a silk robe. Oh, you're home, yeah, I said, slipping off my jacket. I'm home. She hovered awkwardly in the hallway, not coming closer. Where did you go? You just disappeared from the party. Did you miss me? I asked, unable to keep the bitter edge from my voice. Brianna's expression tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I sighed. Suddenly too tired for this conversation. It's been a long night. I'm going to bed. I brushed past her toward our bedroom, but she caught my arm. John, wait, what's going on? I turned to face her, searching her eyes for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with. You tell me, Brianna, what's going on with you and Travis? Her face palled, but she recovered quickly. Travis, he's my boss. We work together. Is that all? What are you implying? Her voice had an edge to it now. Defensive, almost angry. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking you directly. If you're having an affair with him? Brianna's laugh was forced an affair. God, John, you're being ridiculous. Travis is my mentor. He's helping me advance my career. Is that what they're calling it these days? Her eyes narrowed. You're drunk. Yes. I admitted, but I'm not blind. I saw the way you two were together tonight. I saw how you touched him, how you looked at him. You're imagining things. Am I, then? Why did you tell your colleagues? I wouldn't be at the party tonight. Why has Melanie from HR noticed how inseparable you two are at the office? Brianna's expert. Eshin darkened, you were talking to Melanie about me. She approached me, actually seemed surprised to see the mythical husband in the flesh. Brianna pushed past me toward the kitchen. I need a drink for this conversation. I followed her, watching as she poured herself a large glass of wine with shaking hands. You're not denying it. There's nothing to deny, she snapped, slamming the wine bottle down on the counter. I work closely with Travis because he's the senior partner overseeing my division. Yes. We spend time together. Yes. Sometimes we have drinks after work. That's called networking. John, it's how you get ahead in finance, and is ignoring your husband at company parties also part of networking, or telling everyone I wouldn't be there when we made plans together? She took a large sip of wine before answering. I didn't think you'd want to come. You always complain about these events. I came tonight because you asked me to, I said quietly. Because I thought you wanted me there. Something flashed across her. Face guilt, maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. I did want you there, but then you left without saying goodbye. You embarrassed me. I embarrassed you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Brianna, you spent the entire night glued to Travis's side while I sat alone at our table. You barely acknowledged me. That's not true. I introduced you to Marcus from accounting. Oh, right, the one token introduction before you went back to flirting with your boss. Brianna's face flushed with anger. I wasn't flirting. This is my career, John. This is important to me, more important than our marriage. The question hung in the air between us, heavy and threatening. Brianna didn't answer immediately, and her silence told me everything I needed to know. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight, I said, finally turning away before she could see the tears forming in my eyes. John, wait. But I didn't wait. I closed the guest room door behind me and collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling as the reality of my situation crashed over me in waves. My marriage was falling apart, and I had been too blind or too cowardly to admit it until now. When I awoke the next morning, Brianna had already left for work. There was a note on the kitchen counter. We should talk when I get home. I love you, 3 simple words that no longer felt true. I called in sick to my own job, unable to face a day of pretending everything was normal. Instead, I sat in our apartment, going through old photos on my phone, Brianna and me on our honeymoon in Italy, at her sister's wedding building, a sandcastle on a beach in Mexico last summer. We looked happy in those photos. Had it all been a lie? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You deserve to know, meet me for coffee. Melanie from HR. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Melanie at a small cafe 2 blocks from LMB Financial's quarters. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea. I wasn't sure if you would. Why am I here, Melanie? She looked around nervously before reaching into her purse and sliding her phone across the table. I thought you should see this. The screen showed a video file. My hands trembled slightly as I hit play. The footage was dark and grainy, clearly taken at the rooftop party. The camera focused on a corner of the terrace, partially hidden behind some decorative plants. Brianna and Travis stood close together, his back against the wall, her body pressed against his. Her hands slid down his chest to his belt. Their faces drew closer until their lips met, in a kiss that left no room for misinterpretation. The video ended, but the image burned itself into my mind. I pushed the phone back toward Melanie, feeling sick. Why are you showing me this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Melanie tucked her phone away. Because I've been where you are? My ex-husband cheated on me with his coworker. No one told me for months, even though everyone knew she paused meeting my eyes directly. And because Travis Whitfield has a pattern, he targets ambitious women in the office, promises to help their careers. If they reciprocate his interest, then he discards them when he gets bored. And Brianna, is she just his latest victim? Melanie's expression softened with pity. From what I've seen, she's a willing participant. I'm sorry. My mind flashed to Brianna's frantic defense last night, her insistence that their relationship was purely professional. All lies. There's more, Melanie said hesitantly. They're going away together next week. Hawaii, Travis told the office. It's a business trip to meet West Coast clients. But it's not. I finished for her. She shook her head. I saw the booking confirmation on his assistant's desk. 5 days at the Four Seasons in Maui 2 plan. E-tickets. Why are you telling me all this? What do you get out of it? Melanie considered the question. Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to see Travis exposed for who he really is. And maybe I believe that people deserve the truth, even when it hurts. I nodded slowly, processing everything she told me. Thank you for the video and the information as I stood to leave. Melanie caught my arm. What are you going to do? I looked down at her, a plan already forming in my mind. Something I should have done a long time ago. That night when Brianna came home, I was waiting for her with a glass of wine and a calm demeanor that belied the turmoil inside me. John, she said surprised, to find me sitting at our dining table, with candles lit and dinner prepared. What's all this? Sit down, I said, pulling out a chair for her. I wanted to apologize for last night. Confusion flashed across her face as she sat cautiously. Apologize, I was drunk and jealous, and I accused you of things that were unfair. I lied. Smoot. Hastily pouring her a glass of her favorite red wine. You're right, networking is important in your field, and I should be more supportive of your career relief. Flooded her features. Oh, thank you for understanding. I've been so stressed about this promotion, and Travis is the key to making it happen. I'm sure he is, I said, keeping my voice neutral. So tell me about this big meeting in Chicago next week. The one you're preparing for. Brianna froze for just a second, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Chicago. You mentioned it last week. Some important client meeting, right? Yes. She recovered quickly. It's a potential new client asset management for a tech firm. I nodded encouragingly. Sounds important? When do you leave Tuesday morning? I'll be back Thursday night. 3 days, I mused. That's quite a trip for one meeting. There are multiple meetings. She said, her eyes not quite meeting mine, and a dinner. You know how these things go. Of course, I agreed. Well, I hope it goes well. I'm sure Travis will be a big help at the mention of his name. A faint blush crept up her neck. He's not actually coming to this one. It's just me and the team from research. Another lie. I took a sip of my wine to hide my expression. That's too bad. I know how much you value his guidance throughout dinner. I kept the conversation light, asking about her day, sharing anecdotes from my own work. To an outside observer, we would have looked like any normal couple enjoying a meal together. But beneath the surface, every word, every gesture was calculated after dinner. Brianna seemed to relax, believing our fight was behind us. When she suggested we go to bed early, I agreed, playing the role of the devoted husband. One last time later, as she slept beside me, I slipped out of bed and went to our shared computer. We'd always known each other's passwords, a transparency that now felt like a cruel joke. I logged into her email telling myself I just needed confirmation of what I already knew. I found it within minutes, not a business trip to Chicago, but a 5-day getaway to Maui with Travis hotel confirmations, rental car reservations, even a booking for a sunset couples massage. Every detail meticulously planned in an itinerary. Titled TNB Hawaii 2023, I sat back in my chair, oddly calm. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by the cold clarity of betrayal laid bare. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I simply opened my laptop and booked myself a ticket to Maui. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I played the role of supportive husband, helping Brianna pack for her Chicago trip, asking about her presentations, even driving her to the airport on Tuesday morning. "I'll miss you," she said at the departures terminal, kissing me goodbye. "I'll miss you too," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Good luck with your meetings." I watched her walk through security, pulling her carry-on suitcase. The expensive one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Once she was out of sight, I hurried back to my car and drove home to grab my own suitcase. My flight to Maui was leaving in 3 hours. On the plane, I sat next to a honeymooning couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. 6 hours later, I landed in paradise, with a hollow feeling in my chest where love used to reside. I checked into a different hotel than theirs. Close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid accidental encounters. From the balcony of my room, I could see the pristine beach and the turquoise ocean. Beyond it would have been beautiful if I weren't here to document my wife's affair. The next morning, I put on a baseball cap and sunglasses and made my way to the Four Seasons. I claimed a lounge chair by the pool, obscured by a large umbrella, but with a clear view of the entrance. I didn't have to wait long. Brianna and Travis emerged just after 10 a.m., both in swimwear, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders. They looked like any other couple on vacation, relaxed, happy, intimate. They chose a cabana near the far end of the pool, and I watched as a server brought them champagne. They toasted, kissed, and then Travis pulled Brianna onto his lap. I took out my phone and started recording. I wasn't sure why exactly. Maybe as evidence for the divorce I now knew was inevitable, or maybe just to confirm to myself that this was really happening, that I wasn't crazy for 2 days. I followed them at a distance. I saw them holding hands on the beach, feeding each other bites of expensive meals, kissing in the hotel pool. I took photos and videos, not out of some twisted desire to hurt myself further, but as evidence, as proof that I wasn't delusional, that what was happening was real. On the third day, something unexpected happened. I was sitting at a beachfront bar, nursing a beer and watching through my sunglasses as Brianna and Travis played in the waves of Dosh. Omen sat down next to me and ordered a margarita. "You've been following them for 2 days now," she said without preamble. Ex-girlfriend or ex-husband. I turned to her in shock. She was in her 40s, attractive in a sophisticated way, with dark hair and knowing eyes. "Excuse me?" She smiled not unkindly. "I noticed things. Occupational hazard. I'm a private investigator, Rebecca Giao." She handed me a business card. "And you're either stalking that couple or you have a personal connection to one of them." I stared at her, weighing my options. "Husband," I admitted. Finally. "Current husband." "Technically." Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. "The blonde or the Kendall?" Despite everything, I laughed. "The blonde, Brianna, she's supposed to be in Chicago on business, and instead, she's here with her boss. Travis Whitfield." Rebecca whistled low. "Classic. So, what's your plan?" "Dramatic confrontation. Tear scene on the beach. Punch him in his perfect jaw." I shook my head. "No scene. I just needed to see it for myself to know for sure. And now you do so." What next? I'd been asking myself the same question for days. Divorce, I guess? "Have you spoken to a lawyer?" "Not yet." Rebecca sipped her margarita thoughtfully. "You should today. I've seen this scenario play out hundreds of times. The spouse who moves first has the advantage. I don't want to take her for everything she has." I said I just want out honorable. She commented, but naive. "Trust me, protect yourself." She pulled out a notebook and scribbled something. "This is the name of a good divorce attorney in New York. Tell him Becca sent you." I took the paper, oddly touched by this stranger's kindness. "Thank you." Rebecca stood to leave, then hesitated. "One more piece of advice. Whatever you do next, make sure it's for you, not to hurt her, not to get back at him. Do what brings you peace after she left. I sat for a long time considering her words. What would bring me peace? I pulled out my phone and called the lawyer. She'd recommended after a brief consultation I felt more anchored, more in control. Then I walked to a SM. I'll shop near my hotel and bought a plain white envelope and a piece of expensive stationery on it. I wrote simply, "You're responsible for her. Now I wish you luck." I sealed it in the envelope along with my wedding ring and a printed copy of their itinerary. From Brianna's email the next morning, I approached the front desk of the Four Seasons. "I have a delivery for Travis Whitfield," I told the concierge. "I'd be happy to ensure Mr. Whitfield receives it, sir. Thank you, it's important that he gets it today." My task complete. I checked out of my hotel and headed to the airport. I had a sudden desperate need to be as far away from this island as possible. On the flight home, I sat next to an elderly couple who had been married for 52 years. The woman noticed my absent wedding ring and the tan line where it had been. "Recent?" she asked gently. "Very." Now she patted my hand. My Herbert and I almost didn't make it. Past year 7, he had a wandering eye. Back then, Herbert, who was reading a book beside her, looked up ancient history. "Elaine, not to me," she said with a sniff. "I threw him out for 3 months. Made him gravel to come back. Best thing she ever did for me." Herbert admitted, "Taught me what was really important." I smiled politely, but inside, I knew that wouldn't be my story. There would be no graveling, no reconciliation. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal when I landed in New York. I took a taxi straight to my best friend Mike's apartment. Rather than going home, I needed a place to stay. While I figured out next steps, and Mike had a spare room he used as an office wholly. He said, when I explained the situation, Brianna and her boss, "Are you sure I showed him some of the photos I'd taken in Hawaii?" His face darkened with anger on my behalf. What a snake, he spat, both of them. "God, John, I'm so sorry." Yeah, well, I shrugged the emotional numbness that had carried me through the past week, finally beginning to crack. "At least, now I know you can stay here as long as you need," Mike assured me. "But what about when she gets back? Are you going to confront her?" "There's nothing to confront her about. She knows what she did. I left them a note in Hawaii." Mike's eyes widened. "You what?" "You let them know you were there." "Not exactly. I just let them know." "I know, damn," Mike whistled cold. I like it that night I slept on Mike's pull-out couch, expecting a barrage of calls and texts from Brianna. There was nothing complete silence either. She hadn't received my message yet, or she was too shocked to respond. The next day, working from Mike's apartment, I began the process of separating my life from Brianna's. I opened a new bank account and transferred half of our joint savings. I called a realtor about listing our apartment. I made an appointment with the divorce attorney Rebecca had recommended. It was almost methodical. This dismantling of 5 years of marriage, each step should have her but instead I felt a growing sense of liberation. I'd been living in a lie for months, perhaps longer now. At least I was dealing with the truth, however painful it might be. That evening, my phone finally buzzed with a text from Brianna. "We need to talk. I'm coming home early. Meet me at the apartment tomorrow at noon. No apology, no explanation. Just a command typical." Brianna always assuming I would comply with her wishes for once. I didn't immediately respond. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Hours later, I sent back a simple, "Okay." Mike was concerned about me meeting her alone. What if it's a trap? What if she's trying to set you up somehow? "Set me up for what?" I asked, confused. "She's the one who cheated." "I don't know, man. People get weird during divorces, just be careful." The next day I arrived at our apartment, soon to be just hers or just mine exactly. At noon, Brianna was already there, sitting at the dining table with red-rimmed eyes and a haggarded expression. Her usual polished appearance was noticeably absent. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual professional attire. "John," she said, when I walked in half rising from her chair, before sinking back down, "Thank you for coming." I set my keys on the counter. "You wanted to talk." So, talk, her eyes filled with tears. I don't even know where to begin. How about with the truth for once? She flinched at my tone but nodded. "I deserve that." "Yes, I've been seeing Travis. It started about 4 months ago. 4 months. Right around the time she'd been promoted to associate director. Right around the time our sex life had dwindled to almost nothing. Right around the time she'd started coming home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. 4 months, I repeated, and the Chicago story, how many other business trips were actually with him. Brianna looked down at her hands. 3, there were 3 trips, and you were planning to continue lying to me indefinitely? Or was there an endgame? I wasn't aware of, I don't know. She admitted, her voice small. I didn't think that far ahead, it just happened. I laughed bitterly. It just happened for 4 months, multiple times, including a planned vacation to Hawaii. That's not something that just happens. Brianna, that's a deliberate series of choices you made. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Now I know it was wrong. I got caught up in the excitement and the attention. Travis made me feel special, desired, and I didn't. I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. She looked up at me, her expression pained. You used to, but then we settled into this routine, this comfortable but predictable life. I felt like I was disappearing, becoming just your wife, instead of my own person. So instead of talking to me about it, instead of going to Koo's therapy, or taking a vacation together, or any of the 1,000 other options available to you, you decided to. Your boss, Brianna, flinched at my crude language. It wasn't just about the sex. That doesn't make it better. I know, she whispered. I know there's no excuse. But I want you to understand that I still love you. John, what happened with Travis, it was a mistake. A terrible, awful mistake. I studied her face, searching for any sign of the woman I'd fallen in love with. Where is he now, your lover, Brianna's? Expression hardened slightly. I ended things with him after I got your note, after I realized what I was throwing away, how romantic. I said sarcastically, and he was okay with that. Just let you go without a fight. Something flickered across her face. Pain, anger, embarrassment. He wasn't as invested as I was. When I told him I wanted to try to save my marriage, he said he understood that it had been fun while it lasted. So Travis had already moved on, discarding Brianna just as Melanie had predicted he would under different circumstances. I might have felt satisfaction or even pity. Now I felt nothing. What do you want from me, Brianna? I asked tiredly. Forgiveness. Reconciliation. Because I have to tell you, I don't think I have either of those to give. Right now I want a chance. She said, reaching across the table for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. I want us to try to work through this, to rebuild. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, complete transparency, anything I considered her offer. For a long moment, could we move past this? Could I ever look at her without seeing her in Travis's arms? Could I ever trust her again? I need time, I said. Finally, I can't make that decision right now. Relief washed over her face. It wasn't a no, which clearly was what she'd been expecting. Take all the time you need, I'll wait. I'll prove to you that you can trust me again. I stood up suddenly, exhausted by the entire conversation. I'm staying at Mike's for now. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the next steps, lawyer. Her voice rose in panic. John, please don't do anything hasty. Hasty, I echoed incredulously. Brianna, you've been cheating and me for a third of a year. I think I'm entitled to protect myself legally while I decide what I want, of course. She backpedaled quickly. You're right. I don't want this to get ugly. Too late for that, I said, heading for the door. I'll be in touch back at Mike's apartment. I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained from the confrontation. Mike handed me a beer without asking and sat beside me. How'd it go? About as well as could be expected. I sighed. She wants to try again. Says she ended things with Travis. And, do you want to try again? I took a long pull of my beer before answering. I don't know. Part of me says, run and never look back. But another part still loves her. Mike finished for me. Pathetic. Right, human. He corrected, but whatever you decide, make sure it's because it's what you want. Not because you're afraid of starting over the next 2 weeks. I maintained minimal contact with Brianna. She texted daily. Sometimes apologies, sometimes reminiscences about happy times in our marriage. Times mundane updates about her day. I responded politely but briefly, maintaining emotional distance. While I sorted through my feelings, I moved into a small sublet apartment, needing space that was my own, away from both Brianna and Mike's well-intentioned but sometimes suffocating concern. The place was spartanly furnished and in a neighborhood I'd never spent much time in, which suited me fine. Everything felt temporary, transitional. My lawyer, Daniel Rossi, was a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Your case is actually quite straightforward, he told me. During our second meeting, New York is a no-fault state, but the evidence of infidelity gives us leverage if we need it. I don't want to destroy her, I clarified. I just want a fair split and a clean break. Daniel nodded approvingly. That's refreshingly mature. Most clients in your position want blood. 3 weeks after the confrontation at our apartment, I agreed to meet Brianna for dinner, neutral territory, a small Italia. A restaurant we'd never been to together. She was already there when I arrived, nursing a glass of white wine and looking nervous. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. She looked better than she had during our last meeting. More pulled together, some of her usual confidence returning, but there was still a fragility to her that I wasn't used to seeing. How have you been? I asked, ordering a scotch from the hovering waiter. Lonely, she admitted. The apartment feels empty without you. I've been staying with my sister some nights. I nodded, not sure what to say to that. I found a sublet. It's not much, but it works for now. An awkward silence fell between us. 5 years of intimacy suddenly evaporated, leaving two strangers in its wake. I've been seeing a therapist, Brianna said eventually, twice a week. It's helping me understand why I did what I did. Not excusing it, just understanding it. That's good, I said neutrally. I'm glad you're getting help. What about you? Have you thought any more about us? I took a sip of my scotch. Buying time I've thought about almost nothing else. Hope flared in her eyes, and I think we should proceed with the divorce. The hope died, replaced by desperate panic. John, please, I know I made a terrible mistake, but everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe I conceded, but I'm not sure I have it in me to give you one. Every time I close my eyes, I see you with him. Every time you're late coming home or don't answer your phone, I'll wonder who you're with. That's not a marriage. Brianna, that's a prison for both of us. Tears welled in her eyes. So, that's it. 5 years together, just over. You ended it, I said gently. Not me. The moment you decided to betray our vows. You made this choice for both of us. She wiped at her tears angrily. I made a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake that I will regret for the rest of my life. But I still love you, John. I still believe we could be happy together. I loved you too, I said. The past tense, deliberate and painful. But love isn't enough without trust, and I don't think I can ever trust you again. Brianna's shoulders slumped in defeat. For a long moment, she said nothing. Just stared into her wine glass as if it held answers. I wasn't willing to give her. If that's your final decision, she said eventually, her voice hollow, then I won't fight you on the divorce. You deserve to be happy, even if it's not with me. Relief and sadness washed over me in equal measure. Thank you. We finished our meal in near silence, the weight of our failed marriage hanging heavy between us at the end. As we stood awkwardly on the sidewalk outside, Brianna reached out and touched my cheek gently. I really did love you. You know, I still do. I stepped back from her touch. I know, but sometimes love isn't enough. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly civil. Brianna didn't contest anything, agreeing to my terms without argument. We divided our assets, sold our apartment, and within 6 weeks, 7 years of marriage were legally dissolved. She moved in with her sister temporarily. I stayed in my sublet and tried to remember who I was before I became half of John and Brianna. The first months were the hardest. I'd wake up reaching for her, only to find cold sheets beside me. I'd pick up my phone to text her about something funny or interesting, only to remember we didn't do that anymore. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, and avoided social gatherings where I might have to explain my newest. Ingle status friends tried to set me up on dates, but I declined, not ready to let anyone new into my life. The betrayal had left scars that needed time to heal. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was driving home from a rare night out with friends when a pickup truck ran a red light and T-boned my car. The impact wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to send me to the emergency room with a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, and a dislocated shoulder. "Mr. Harrington?" A soft voice roused me from a pain medication. "Induced haze? I need to check your vitals." I opened my eyes to find a woman in blue scrubs standing beside my hospital bed. Her name tag read, Amanda Chen RN. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled on a scale of 1 to 10. "How would you rate your pain right now?" she asked. Checking my IV physically or emotionally, I mumbled, still groggy. She paused, looking at me with unexpected understanding. "Both valid questions," she said. "Let's start with physical and work our way up from there over the next 3 days in the hospital." Amanda became my favorite person to see. She brought me extra pudding cups, adjusted my pillows without being asked, and most importantly, talked to me like a human being rather than just another patient. On my last night there, she came in during her break. So she said, sitting in the visitor's chair beside my bed, "Want to tell me about the emotional pain scale?" Now, I surprised myself by actually answering her. Honestly, I told her about Brianna, about Travis, about Hawaii, and the divorce. She listened, without interrupting, nodding, occasionally her eyes never leaving my face when I finished. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "My fiancé left me 2 weeks before our wedding for my maid of honor." "Shit," I breathed. "That's brutal." "Yeah." She smiled roughly, found out they'd been seeing each other for months, all those wedding planning meetings she was helping me with. Apparently they weren't all about flower arrangements. "What did you do?" I asked. "Canceled the wedding, returned the gifts cried for about a month straight." She shrugged. Then I put myself back together and decided not to let it define me. "How's that working out?" "Some days are better than others," she admitted. "But I'm getting there." Before I was discharged the next morning, I worked up the courage to ask for her number. She hesitated only briefly before writing it on the back of my discharge papers. "Just to be clear," she said, "I don't usually give my number to patients. Just to be clear." I replied, "I don't usually get hit by trucks to meet women." Her laugh was genuine and warm, nothing like the practiced performative laugh Brianna had developed for her colleagues and superiors. Amanda and I started slowly coffee after her shift a walk in Prospect Park, a movie where we barely watched the screen because we were too busy talking. We were careful with each other, both carrying our own wounds, both afraid of making the same mistakes again. 2 months after my accident, I ran into Travis at a restaurant in Manhattan. I was waiting for Amanda at the bar when he walked in with a young woman who definitely wasn't Brianna. They didn't notice me at first, too absorbed in each other. His hand rested on her lower back exactly as it had with my ex-wife at that fateful rooftop party. When Travis finally spotted me, he froze. The woman continued to the table while he approached the bar. "John," he said awkwardly, "how are you?" "Better than expected," I replied honestly. "You?" He glanced back at his date. "Good things are good. Where's Brianna?" His expression shifted slightly. We were taking some time apart. I wasn't surprised, not really, let me guess. The excitement wore off once you weren't sneaking around anymore. Travis had the decency to look ashamed, something like that, he admitted. "Look, John, I know it doesn't mean much, but I am sorry about how everything happened." I took a sip of my drink considering my response a year ago. I might have punched him 6 months ago. I might have cursed him out. But now looking at this man who had once seemed so threatening, so superior, I felt nothing but pity. "You know what the funny thing is, Travis? I should thank you." He blinked in confusion. "Thank me if you hadn't slept with my wife. I'd still be in a marriage with someone who didn't really want me." I explained I'd still be trying to make someone happy who was fundamentally dissatisfied. "So yeah, in a weird way, You did me a favor before he could respond. I felt a hand on my arm. Amanda had arrived beautiful in a simple blue dress, her hair down around her shoulders. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kissing my cheek. "The subway was a nightmare." "Worth the wait," I told her. Meaning it more than she could know, I introduced her to Travis, keeping it vague about how we knew each other after a brief, awkward exchange. Travis returned to his date. "Ex-friend?" Amanda asked, once he was out of earshot. "Something like that," I replied. "I'll tell you later." As we were seated at our table, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Brianna, the first contact we'd had in months. "I heard you ran into Travis. Can we talk sometime?" I looked up from my phone to find Amanda watching me, her face open and curious. There was no manipulation there, no hidden agenda, just genuine interest and affection. I turned my phone off and put it away without responding. "Everything okay?" Amanda asked. "Everything is exactly as it should be," I told her, reaching across the table to take her hand later that night. As Amanda slept beside me in my apartment, I thought about the strange, painful journey that had led me here. The humiliation, the betrayal, the loneliness. All of it had been necessary to bring me to this moment. I'd learned that sometimes when something breaks beyond repair, the only option is to build something new from the scattered pieces. Not a replica of what was lost, but something entirely different. Something possibly better. 3 weeks later, I received a final text from Brianna. Travis is engaged to his secretary. Guess I wasn't so special after all. I didn't respond, but I felt a sense of closure wash over me. Whatever karmic debt had existed between us was now settled. Brianna had sought excitement and found heartbreak. I had sought loyalty and eventually found peace. As for Travis, well, some people never learn. Some people keep chasing the next thrill, the next conquest. Ver realizing that true satisfaction comes from building something meaningful, not from destroying what others have built. Amanda stirred beside me, reaching out in her sleep until her hand found mine. I squeezed it gently, reassuring her that I was there, that I would be there tomorrow and the day after that, for as long as she would have me in the quiet darkness of my bedroom. With the city lights filtering through the blinds, I finally understood what had happened at that rooftop party. A year ago, I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. I had simply been set free music.